Fury fam, I know what you're expecting. You're expecting a rant, right? You're expecting the unhinged yelling and screaming, calling for people's heads, all of that nonsense. But here's what I'm going to tell you. And by the way, if you appreciate objective sports analysis and you're a Dolphins fan or an NFL fan, or a Titans fan, and you appreciate objective analysis and just good discussion, please click the subscribe button. If you've been coming here and you followed me at any other time, you've seen any of my videos, do me a favor really quick, click that subscribe button right here. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. We're trying to carve our own lane here in the podcast sphere. So click it, takes 2 seconds. I appreciate you. And also you can join Fury Fam. I'm going to have a written column out tomorrow. You can join and become a member. It's really affordable. But look, I'm going to tell you that it's going to be okay, guys. Like, I understand getting emotional and wanting your team to win and being aggravated and being upset when your team loses. But something you got to do just as an objective observer, take yourself out of the fanboy realm for 1 second. Take off your aqua colored glasses and think about what this team did both at the end of last season and in the off season, and think about whether or not this team really was going to take a step forward or actually be a contender this season. I've been telling you that I was hesitant to really have high expectations for this team all off season and then to start this season, because you had a team last year where the front office clearly made a decision to go all in and clearly made a decision to try to make a Super Bowl run last year. And then this year, because first of all, forget that. Last year they tried to make a run and they failed, right? There were injuries that stacked up, especially along the offensive line. There were some key injuries on defense, although defense really wasn't the problem despite the injuries. And once again, the coach, Mike McDaniel, failed to be able to innovate beyond his initial scheme that elevated Tua's play and the offense's play. And he was unable to counterpunch once defenses figured out his scheme. And then you had a quarterback who consistently failed to shine in clutch moments, failed to shine in the biggest moments. So we failed last year. Now you come into this offseason and you're going to face salary cap problems. Some pundits out there told you, don't worry about the salary cap. If you want hopium, if you want lies, if you want anger, there's some podcaster out there, I'm telling you right now, who's going to give it to you, right? There's a Dolphins podcaster out there who's going to give you anger. He's going to find a scapegoat. It's going to be all McDaniel's fault. And, make him the scapegoat. You funnel all your anger just at him. There's going to be somebody out there who's going to give you hopes and dreams like, once Tua gets back, we're going to win. And there's always going to be a podcaster to give you what you want to hear. But I'm just going to give you the truth and reality. And that's all I can give you. And it's okay. That's why I'm not upset today. I'm not upset because I expected this loss. Huntley, I thought might do something different. I was just curious to see, but he clearly didn't. But I'm not going to sit here and be one of these narrative spinners and just blame, Huntley sucks. The reason is Huntley sucks. Even the announcers were doing it. Tua, he wishes he could help because they're just not, they can't get it done with Huntley. Like, no, that's just another narrative to spin to you, to keep you fixated, to keep you paying attention, to keep you engaged. But you don't have to be that engaged. We all know that the jig is up. This team in this present iteration just isn't it. It is what it is. And that's okay. So you can blame Huntley, but I'm not going to do that. The whole team top to bottom, right? Mike McDaniel does not have these guys prepared. It's obvious. He didn't have them prepared when Tua was in the game. He doesn't have them prepared now. And the lack of discipline is evident with Mike McDaniel. The lack of attention to detail is evident. The lack of accountability is evident with Mike McDaniel. All of these things are evident with Mike McDaniel. But it also comes down to the players, right? These are grown men. And you have them getting 2 illegal motion penalties in key moments. You have them dropping passes. You have them missing blocks. You have them missing tackles. And you could say it's all on the coach, but do you think Tom Brady allows that to happen to his team when he was playing? Do you think Patrick Mahomes allows that type of play? Do you think those guys hold themselves to a higher standard without needing the coach to tell them that? Of course they do. This entire team, top to bottom, is a failure right now. And it's because of the culture of the team and the mentality of the team and the fact that the team has no answers. Now, the commentators today on the broadcast said that they talked to Chris Grier. And they showed Chris Grier up in the box, and they said they talked to Chris Grier. And they said that Chris Grier pretty much admitted the problem here. And a lot of people are going to miss it because they want to get angry or they want to get hopeful or they want to get sad or whatever it is. And instead of looking at it like a casual observer and keeping it real, they're going to miss a very important tidbit in that broadcast. And that very important tidbit was they said that Chris Grier said, you can look at the analytics, you can look at the stats, you can do all those things. But what we care about is relationships, and relationships are important to us, blah, blah, blah. And it's evident that the Miami Dolphins care more about their relationship with Tua. That's why they didn't go out and get real competition in the quarterback room. That's why they didn't play hardball with the contract negotiations and the fifth-year option. That's why their salary cap is stretched to the brim for star players who they consider to be ambassadors to the fan base, who they consider to be people who sell jerseys, but who analytically, stat-wise, as Grier admitted, they might not necessarily on paper be players and the construction of a team that's going to get you a championship. The Dolphins consciously made a decision that relationships were more important to them than winning. And I've been trying to tell you that for a long time. And if you really care about this team, or at least you really want to know the true situation, you should listen to the fact that I've been telling you this for a while, okay? It's more about the relationships than actually winning. And at this point, I find it funny that people want to scapegoat and get angry at people based on whatever their allegiance is, based on whatever their narrative is. Mike McDaniel was a genius to some people a year ago. But he wasn't a genius because they looked legitimately at his play design and looked legitimately at his abilities and said, wow, this guy by himself, this guy in a vacuum, I think he's a football genius. Many people loved Mike McDaniel. Many people praised him as a genius. Not so much because of what he could do independently as a coach, but because they had so much allegiance to Tua. So much allegiance to Tua and so much hope and dreams tied up in this Tua legend, this Tua myth that never really came to fruition. That Mike McDaniel getting the most out of Tua was enough for them, and it made him a legend in their mind, not because they truly looked at what he was doing and thought, wow, they'll never be able to counterpunch this, but because he was elevating their dream. He was elevating and keeping the fantasy alive that this guy Tua was going to be the next legend and great NFL quarterback. And the fact is that Mike McDaniel, I told you the other day on Larry Lucci G and Shake, I told you that the Dolphins had a very limited pool to choose from when they fired Brian Flores because Tua didn't get along with him, because Flores didn't believe in Tua. They had a smaller pool to choose from because they had to choose somebody who specifically was going to get the most out of Tua, work with Tua, and was basically hired to bolster Tua and his play on the field. And the Dolphins invested in Tyreek Hill. They invested in Mike McDaniel, and Mike McDaniel designed an offense specifically for the purpose of elevating Tua and that offense for a limited amount of time to get fans excited and to look like they were on the right trajectory. But Tyreek Hill, as great of a player as he is, as much of a legend as he is, he comes with an extremely hefty price tag. And he comes with certain distractions at times. And at the end of the day, his stats are beautiful in the regular season, and they were beautiful last year. But even in clutch moments, Tyreek, compared to his salary cap number, is not giving you what you need if you want to be a true championship contender. Now, I'm not beefing with him as an individual. I'm not saying he's not a legendary player. He's an extremely good player. But there's a reason that the Kansas City Chiefs were able to part ways with him and still win 2 Super Bowl titles after parting ways with him. It's not because he's a bad player, he's a cancer, or anything like that. It's just because that type of player for that type of price tag is not exactly the type of player and the strategic decision you want to make if you want to build a Super Bowl championship caliber team, because of the cap space it eats up versus the proportion of plays that he comes up with when it matters. But all of these things were done to simply give you an illusion and sell tickets for a year. But, I don't think it's all BS, right? I don't think Stephen Ross and Chris Grier and all them sat there last year and said, we're going to just lie to this fan base. We're going to sell them a bunch of nonsense. I don't think so. I think they really thought they had a chance last year. And I'll tell you the truth, they did have a chance last year early in the season. You could say all you want about Fangio. You could say all you want about the flaws as the third receiver, but Wilson wasn't bad. He's better than LBJ, who's not playing. The end of the day, that team with Mostert, with that offensive line, was designed to be a championship contender. And earlier in the season, they were one of the better teams. I don't care if you want to call me delusional. I don't care what you want to call me. They were. But injuries on offense and a lack of imagination, and then just ultimately failing. Mike McDaniel and the quarterback ultimately not being able to get it done cost them that actual opportunity that they had last year. But now this year, they're not going to admit that, hey, we went all in last year and now we're completely incapable of figuring out how to move forward. They're going to spin a narrative. They're going to lie to you. That's what they do. They have to sell tickets. They have to market. That's what businesses do. And they have mouthpieces in the media who want to sell clicks on their own channels and want to sell you on things. And they're going to continue to make things up too. Therefore, now they're trying to keep your eyes glued to the screen by saying Tua's coming back and it's his decision. It's all about him. We have no say. We can't even talk about it. It's all about him. It's just another narrative. He traveled with the team. He went to Disney World. Okay, man, it's a side story. He's not on the field. Let's talk about the guys on the field right now. And right now, I'll tell you, look, Huntley didn't look very good. He didn't look very good, but nobody on the team looked good. All right? You got penalties all over the place. The offensive line is an utter joke, but again, I told you they would be. When the interior of your offensive line is the backups from last year and an okay, maybe okay center that you signed, and your perimeter guys are a guy who had a good season last year, but before that was largely considered a bust, and a guy who cannot stay on the field and is getting older and older, you're in trouble. When you let a Christian Wilkins go and you let an AVG go, and, Calais Campbell, awesome guy. I mean, I give him so many props. He graduated high school the same time I graduated high school. He's my age. He's 39 years old. And he's out there playing. I mean, that's a feat. I mean, all credit to that guy. But when you think you're going to roll into the season with those type of replacements over guys who had a ton of upside and were in the prime of their careers, it's just not going to happen. And so I don't know why anybody would be too emotional right now, because it's obvious that this was not going to be a great season. And I compare it, there's Jets fans out there who, no offense to you guys either, but you thought just because Aaron Rodgers came back that you were Super Bowl contenders, constantly saying how great you were on paper. But you had flaws way deeper than just Aaron Rodgers, and it's showing its face now. And if you just take a step out of your own fan base and look at what other fan bases think of your team, you get a better perspective. Nobody was scared of the Miami Dolphins this year. Nobody. Nobody's scared of the New York Jets. People thought, okay, they might be pretty good with Aaron. Let's see what they do. But no one was shaking in their boots. That's because other people don't see the team with the emotional prism that you do, and they're able to understand that they have flaws. Now, this game was, again, they should pay us to watch games like this. This was another torturous, plotting, boring game. Just agonizingly boring to watch. And part of it's because Mike McDaniel's offense is absolutely pedestrian. Part of it's because our trenches, especially our offensive line, is so pathetic that it can't set the tone at all. And the quarterback's consistently under duress. And, Achane can hit as many holes as he wants. He found some decent creases. I actually think this offensive line is a decent run blocking line in some ways. Just not good at pass protection in a lot of other ways. But just pedestrian in every way. Mike McDaniel is unimaginative. And at what point, at one point you could say, and the narrative is amongst, huge Tua guys that, well, see, this Tua makes this engine run. Tua makes this system go. Without Tua, you can't do anything. But at what point does that narrative get so ridiculous that you start to wonder, well, shouldn't some quarterback be able to do something in an offense if the coach is in any way worth his salt? Like whether Tua makes this thing run or not, and you want to push that narrative, another quarterback should be able to do something if the offense is any way viable in the NFL. And the fact that no other quarterback can do anything is an indictment on Chris Grier for not bringing in anybody who can. But it's also an indictment on the offensive system in general. And it's also an indictment on the coach in general. But if it's an indictment on the coach, then it's also an indictment on the front office and the leadership and management of this team who has decided to bring that coach in. And the only reason they brought that coach in was for one simple reason, to bolster Tua, and because they could not bring in a coach with his own ideas who wasn't sure about Tua, because their entire thing, Chris Grier said it. Chris Grier said it. It's about relationships, not analytics, not stats, just relationships. So if you expected anything from this team this year in terms of winning or statistics or analytics, and you looked at the analytics and you thought this team was actually going to contend, that's your problem. This was always about spinning a narrative and relationships with star players that the Dolphins think are more important than winning football games or championships in the long term. And so you shouldn't be spending your Monday night or your week being emotional or pulling your hair out or getting screaming at the TV screen that Mike McDaniel's got to go, or screaming at the TV screen, that Tyler Huntley sucks, or whatever else you're doing. Because you should know better, especially if you listen to this channel. You should know that this team was never designed to be very good this year. And the injury to Tua, that shouldn't surprise you. It was not even a crazy hit. It wasn't a freak accident. It was a regular, routine hit. If that, Tua hit him. And he goes into a concussion that visibly shaken. We should know that he was prone to that injury. That's not a revelation. And then putting him on IR for 4 weeks when we don't have any confirmation that neurologists said he had to sit out for 4 weeks. We don't have any confirmation that that made the most sense. That's just what they're doing. Because they're not necessarily in this thing to try to figure out what the best thing for the team's victory path is. It's all about relationships. And I get it. And that's a novel, nice thing to be. Is all about relationships and be a nice person and all those things. That's great. But that doesn't win you championships. So if you're going to be a fan of this team, you should just know that and not get emotional. So, look, long story short, I know that was a rambling, rumbling, bubbling, stumbling video, kind of like Mike McDaniel's press conferences, and I apologize for that. But I don't know what else to say, because I've been telling you this for a couple weeks now, and if you go back even further, I've kind of been telling you this for longer than that. So what is my solution? This team needs to be completely torn down to the studs. You need to get a brand new GM. You need to get a brand new coach. I'm looking at a Mike Vrabel type guy. And you need to let them make the decision. Stephen Ross needs to stay the hell out of every aspect. Hire the GM, Stephen, and then go back to New York. Go to your mansion. Go do whatever it is that you do. And don't have any input whatsoever into anything that goes on with the football team. Let the GM decide who his coach is, and then let the coach and GM decide what players they want to build around, what players they want to keep, what players they want to get rid of. But the culture on this team, it's not just the coach, it's also the players. The culture on this team is completely bankrupt. Trying to get the bag and trying to, increase your own stats, it's not working. Running the team and running any coach out of town that has an opinion or is a little bit abrasive is not working. You need to build around the right people, tear it down to the absolute studs. This iteration of the Dolphins died last year when they couldn't get it done. Yes, there were injuries, but also the quarterback and coach couldn't get it done, and that was the end of it. And Chris Grier staked his entire tenure on a coach and a quarterback, and they failed, therefore he failed. This iteration of the Dolphins is dead. That's why I'm not emotional, because I already knew it, and I know it even more now, and it's okay. We will live another day, we will live another year, and one day maybe they'll get it right, and one day some iteration of this team will retain its prior glory. And maybe we'll go back to the old logo too. And maybe we'll have a legit logo again, and the aqua jerseys will look better, and the numbers will look better. Because something about the tonight just rubbed me the wrong way because I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of this whole era. Sick of the era, and this era includes Philbin and Gase and McDaniel and Tannehill and Tua. It's all the same era to me. And I'm tired of this era. I'm over this era. It's time to turn the page on this entire era. Let's switch it all up. Our year was last year. I was excited last year. It was a legitimate chance last year, but we ultimately failed. And it's time to move on. Not time to be emotional. Not find one scapegoat, Mike McDaniel, Huntley, Skyler, this center, that tight end, that guy. It's the whole thing. Tear it down. Build a new team. Guys, if you haven't done so yet, click that subscribe button. I'm truly trying to continue to grow. I'm trying to keep it real with you. I can have these fireside chats with you every game, every week. You'll always count on me to do it. So click that subscribe button if you want to help me out. Click the join button, become a member. There's perks. You get preference on the live streams for your comments. You get behind the scenes content and things of that nature. Click the like button and tune into us tomorrow night. Larry, Lucci, G, and Shake. We will be live. You can join us on the panel. I'm in the middle of moving, so I don't know if my computer setup will be very good, but I'll pop on. I'm definitely going to talk to you guys. And then we got more football coming up, so we're going to be here throughout the season, even though it's not that fun. But we're going to keep it real, 100% real, 100% of the time. And you can go to those other stations to fulfill your emotional thirst for anger or for hope or whatever. But right here, we're going to keep beating the same drum, which is we need to tear it down, build it back up. That's the nature of what it is. We are not going to get past this. Whether you have a terrible season or an okay season, it doesn't matter. It's all the same until you win a Super Bowl or go to a Super Bowl. So that's where we're at, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Much more than that pathetic game today. And I will talk to all you guys soon. Fins up, Larry K out.